Colby Dion, and today we have a very special guest. His name is Dexter Nicholas. Hi.
Hi.
So how have you been doing?
I'm good. A lot of working from home, a whole lot of creative process and indulging in some of the stuff that's been put on Netflix and what's it called? Disney Plus. I think I'm on my sixth watch of Hamilton at this point. It's fantastic if anybody hasn't seen it yet. But hanging out with my girlfriend and my nephew's in town from Houston right now, so hanging out with him and just staying as busy with all that as possible.
Have you picked up any new skills since COVID?
No, I've been more focusing on strengthening some of the skills that I already have. Well, first during COVID, I bought a house, and so really being in here and like unpacking and setting stuff up and learning how expensive it is to like run a household has been at the forefront. And I'm finally settled in now. Everything's painted and unboxed and put in places. That place may be the middle of the floor, but it's my house, so nobody can tell me anything, which is real
Did you
nice.
paint
And
yourself?
I did. I painted the outside and I painted the room that I'm sitting in right now, and the rest of it stayed the same color. But I've really been more focused on really strengthening my skill of mixing and mastering music. So I finally had the time to sit down and work on the new album and get it all mixed and mastered, and go through the process of approval from my musical big bros and sisters for them to sign, not necessarily sign off, but to be like, yeah, that sounds good. You should consider putting it out now. So basically just been focusing on that and occasionally guitar, but that's it.
So did you mix them? You mix and master it yourself?
I did. I recorded, mixed, and mastered everything myself. I think I went through about 4 different iterations of the album being done, because as you're on this journey to learn mixing and mastering, because people think it's like a super easy process, and people don't really put the creativity behind mixing and mastering that like most people do, especially rappers, right? So when I think of mixing and mastering, I think of people like The Weeknd and Travis Scott who use the experience of sound as like a medium through the music. And not a lot of people do that. Most people just put like reverb and compression and EQ, and they consider that song good to go. And then you get to the mixing process. And I straight up had a guy who I was thinking about sending the music to master. I was like, yeah, I don't really understand the mastering process. Because after I sent it to him, he was like, man, this mix sounds really good. Who did it? I said, well, I did it. He was like, well, why don't you master it too? Like, you could save yourself some money. And I was like, well, I don't really understand what mastering is. Like, I need a couple of years to really get into it. And he was like, oh, it's just making the music louder. And I was like, that doesn't sound like a true mastering process, right? And so,
right.
Yeah, and so I went through the process of learning what mastering is, and I'm not as good at it as mixing, but I definitely have some skills there, good enough to where I feel like the album can come out with my mastering skills on it. But it's still, an art within an art. So, like I said, it's not just about the reverb and the echo and it's about learning how to give people a sonar experience, and that's what I want my music to reflect. So you'll hear in my music there are things that you're like, oh, that came out of nowhere, or how did you do that? Even like using Siri from my phone to say certain lyrics for me and mixing her into the mix. So it's a whole process that people don't really give the respect it deserves, for sure. Sorry, that was a tangent, but
no, it's fine. That's a complete skill within itself.
Yeah, it is. People don't realize that how beneficial a good mixer is, and how good mixing can kind of bring some life in the otherwise semi boring music or boring music period.
So I want to ask you what I call icebreaker questions.
Shoot.
So they're random questions, and you just say whatever comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the first one is Biggie or Tupac?
Pop. Easy.
Beyonce or Kiki Wyatt?
Beyonce.
um, did you even hear the second person?
Didn't need to. Unless it was Prince, it wasn't going to be a stretch.
Brandy or Monica?
Brandy. Although I have to say, people give Brandy's vocals too much credit.
You think so?
I really do. I think she's okay at best, but she doesn't even crack my like top 10 of female vocalists specifically. And if we start adding men into the mix, she's probably not even like top 15, top 20.
Prince or Michael Jackson?
I won't decide. I love them both way too much.
What is one food that you will never give up?
Ooh, that's tough. Um, that's really probably popcorn. Actually, I love popcorn.
Really?
I love popcorn. Yeah.
Huh. What kind of animal are you most like?
Uh, does it have to be a real animal?
Do you know fake ones?
I mean, I know mystical ones. I don't necessarily see myself as an animal. I never really thought of that. My Patronus was a hawk, so I'll go with that, or an eagle from Harry Potter when I took the Patronus thing. So
I
I'm
watched
going to
that last
say,
night.
oh, it's all on HBO Go, and I couldn't be happier that I finally get to watch all the Harry Potters again. Sorry, not HBO Go, HBO Max. So yeah, I'm gonna go
Um,
with a raptor.
are you gonna change to a raptor?
No, I mean a raptor as in a predatory bird. Sorry. Yes, like a hawk or an
Oh,
eagle or an owl. Yes.
okay.
There you
What is the worst thing about humanity?
go. Stupidity, and I don't mean like being uninformed. I mean like actual stupid people, which we see a lot of right now,
That's,
and the inability to understand intellectualism is just it irks me to my core.
I would agree with that. Shaka Khan or Patti LaBelle?
Patti LaBelle, one of my favorite voices of all time. I love Patti LaBelle. Shaka's dope though, but Patti.
J. Cole or Kendrick Lamar?
Kendrick all day. J. Cole, I haven't listened to him since whatever Forest Drive, which was a great album.
Forrest.
But yeah, but K Dot is just again, it's the mixing in his music, right? He's just so like aggressive, and there are always things happening that you have to pay attention to in his music with pitch changes, and he's just and of course his lyrics are great. So Kendrick by like 8 lengths in that race.
So that was the last icebreaker question I had. Basically, tell us about yourself. Where did you grow up?
Mm-hmm.
How'd you get into music?
Well, I grew up in early life, Plaquemine, Bruley area in Plaquemine, which is about a 25-minute drive outside of Baton Rouge and a 15-minute drive outside of Baton Rouge, respectively. Plaquemine is where all of my grandparents were born. Two of my grandparents were born, and my mom and all of her siblings, and so we still have a lot of roots there. Both of my grandparents are buried there, along with a whole host of other family. And so grew up there, started singing at Ebenezer Baptist Church on Barrow Street. Did that for a while. Then we moved to Christian, what is the name? St. Lou Family Christian Center, where I joined the choir there. And so a lot of the early years of my life was me singing gospel music. And, in my early teens, like not early teens, late teens, I'm sorry, like 18, 19, I started playing music with a friend at, when I started working at a summer camp. And that led to me playing in, bands and bands and doing cover music to make a little bit of extra money. And then I joined a band, I guess 2018-ish, 2017, 2018. And this is when the Trump stuff was getting like really, really out of hand. We were past the fact that he just got elected. And he was really starting to do some things. You get 2 years into your administration, you're really starting to make some policies and do some shifts. And I learned that they were avid Trump supporters, which to me, Trump supporting and racist is the exact same thing. And so I was not about to be in a band with a bunch of white guys who supported Trump as their, black lead singer. And me and one of the guys, and I was very strategic about it. I said, as long as the balance stays to where I like more of them than I dislike, I'll stay with the group, right? And so then I think there was 5 of us, and at one point the third one pissed me off, and I was like, all right, I'm done with this, right? Like I only like one of you who I still talk to today, and left that band pretty abruptly, and was like, yeah, I'm not coming back. Y'all, like, good luck in your endeavors, but I'm not going to be a part of this. And I was laying in bed after I sent them the text message, and then immediately blocked their numbers because I didn't feel like dealing with the rest of it. And I was laying in bed, and one of my good friends, Marcel P. Black, who's a rapper in Baton Rouge, does this event called Fade the Flow Sundays, which is a really cool event where he brings people from all around the country to this barber shop in Baton Rouge, right by my friend's house, my dad's house, not my friend. And basically they just perform in front of this audience. It's just beautifully set up. If you go to my Instagram, you'll see, videos all over it. And he was doing, basically all you have to do to perform is send a submission, like, this is what I want to do, here's my songs. And you have to agree to not rap over vocals, which is a whole thing in the hip hop world.
Mhm.
And so I was laying in bed and I was like, well, I've been recording my songs for a couple of years, not because I wanted to perform them, but just because, like, it was a release for me to learn how to mix music. I would just write stuff to record it. I was like, well, let me just send it. And so I sent him that in September. In December, I made it on. I was selected to, like, play,
Mhm.
and that started this whole journey of me doing this. So basically, I had from September to December to, like, get my life together to perform my own music and take a risk on myself, right? And I think
Scary.
it was very scary, but I just decided that it was more important for me to take the risk on myself than to continue to depend on, other people and other musicians and deal with their, vision for the creativity. Like, it was just like, just do this yourself. And I did it, and it was really good. And I made a goal of performing in 10 shows. So that was in December of 2018. Not 2019. My goal was to perform 10 shows. And I ended up performing at, like, 34.
Wow.
Because people would come and see me and then ask me to go other places. I even performed out of the city. So I did a couple in New Orleans and a couple in Lafayette, and I got invited to come to Alexandria and Monroe and all these things, which I ended up turning down. And I got invited to come out of state, but I didn't feel like my product was ready yet to be, more than a local act, without an album and without merch and all of that. And so I was also asked to come back and be one of the all-star performers of the Fade the Flow thing that they do every year. So out of the, 60 or 70 performers that they have per year, I was one of 5 selected as the all-star group. And that was in June. And so after June, you really start to see, like, everything pick up. So that's kind of my journey to performing my own music. And I did my last show in December. The next step is I wanted to curate my own shows. And so in December, I promoted and did my own show at this place called the Brickyard, which was awesome. We had a couple hundred people attend, made great money. But of course, after that, COVID hit. And so there really was no opportunity to maintain momentum on that. But hopefully, once all this is over, we'll jump back in and continue the journey of just investing in myself.
So if COVID lasts a lot longer than it's already lasted longer, but if it lasts even longer
Mm-hmm.
than we think it's gonna last, do you see yourself doing any like virtual shows or anything?
I don't, because I am a crazy person behind my performances. So my performances, just like my mixes, are very unique. I have a vocal box that's actually sitting behind me that allows me to change the pitch of my voice, that allows me to do echo, do harmonies, do reverb, do, different things with the transients and all of that. And so I practice it ridiculously. Actually, I'm supposed to have a show on Saturday. That's a secret show, so I can't say anything about it because, of course, the governor says that we're not supposed to be doing shows in bars or whatever. But this week, it'll look like about 3 hours of practice a day for about 5 or 6 days to get it back together. And so that's why I don't do virtual shows, is because the sound is never good. There's always a delay between what I'm saying and what's going into the computer, and because of me having to press buttons and all of that,
Yeah.
and move things based on a certain part of the song, it doesn't work well virtually. Now, might I record something, like hire somebody to record it and release it? Yeah,
Mhm.
that's more probable. But actually doing a virtual event, unless one of the big dogs in Baton Rouge or New Orleans ask me to do something that they particularly are promoting, then I probably won't do anything. But with all that said, I did invest in equipment so that making virtual performances more or less more latency free, um, can happen. But I'm just holding on to it. So hopefully, when all this is over, I can return it and get my money back. But we'll see.
Do you have you ever heard of Kiara Shears?
Yeah, Kiki Sheard, right? That's Jack. That's Karen's daughter, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So the reason I asked is because right now she had a huge tour scheduled, and
Mhm.
instead of canceling it, she broke it down into different, like northeast, north of the United States, south,
Mhm.
whatever. And so she's selling tickets that way. And
Mhm.
then people are getting more bang for their buck because then they can go back and watch it. But you also have the chance to watch her live. I just thought that was really cool.
I think it's a cool idea for her to make money. Personally, I am a fan. I actually go to concerts to keep my my creative juice is flowing because seeing other people perform helps me to do my thing, which
Yeah.
is why I love Hamilton, right? But of course, Hamilton is a very well produced and directed show. I mean, I'm more against that idea simply because I feel like it is a more bang for your buck. I feel like I can go on YouTube and watch you perform it like any moment, and I wouldn't have to pay $30 or $40 a ticket for Kiki Shear. I'm not paying $30 $40 a ticket. I'm
To
not paying
watch in your living room.
yeah, like I'm just not going to do it. And so I respect the game and artists, people who use art to make money. Like right now, I get why you have to do those things, but luckily I have a full-time job, you know, and I don't really have to depend on those means. And so while like shout out to you, I'm never going to be mad at anybody for getting their money, but I will not be investing in that product. I will wait for somebody to do what's always done, which is leak it. And if I want to see it, then I will watch it on the YouTube or one of the websites that hide stuff for you, like you know some of the websites that I'm not going to mention on your show. But you know, so like shout out to her though. I love her voice. In fact, I think her mom is one of the more underrated vocalists of all time.
It's amazing to me how underrated she is.
Yeah, I mean she's a screamer, right? She's definitely a screamer, and people don't really gravitate towards that.
I do.
But I what you see, like I would choose Patti LaBelle over like Aretha Franklin every time, just because I love texture of voices more than I love like range and whatnot.
Yeah.
But like I respect anybody who can scream and yell and hit those notes, like Yella for Hudson or Scream Tasia. Like either one of them, they're both great. But I tend to go towards the like Celine Dion, Beyonce type of voices than I do those screamers. But she is, I mean, There's a Bomb in Gilead is one of the most banging, slapping gospel songs of
You
all
know,
time.
I listen to the Clark sisters when I work out.
Really?
Yeah.
You know, the Lifetime movie made me try because I had never listened to them before. They're just a hair outside of like my musical. Um, I wouldn't even say a hair. They're like 70s, 80s, early 90s,
Mhm.
right? You know, growing up for us, it was like Yolanda Adams, Donnie McClurkin,
Right.
Kurt Franklin, Tone. Like those were the folks I listened to, and so I tried to go back and listen to their music. But the mixing just isn't good. Like I don't know
No,
how to put like
no,
it's
it's
so
not.
bad.
It's so bad.
and I tried to listen to it and I was like, why does it sound like they're in a like cathedral
Yep.
with just, and I was just like, I can't handle it. And so, but their mom was a musical genius in the way that she wrote harmonies, and we wouldn't have like Chloe and Halle if we didn't have the Clark sisters like they do. We wouldn't have what Beyonce's done or what Brandon Boyd and Incubus does. Like we wouldn't have any of that if it wasn't for Mama Clark. And so I respect them from that, but I just can't listen. It just sounds so bad. It hurts my ears.
It sounds really bad. So the R&B singer JoJo,
Yeah.
she re-released all of her old music
Mm-hmm.
because the recordings weren't good.
Mm.
So she has an album out now. I think she released it in 2018 that all of her old music is on there. And the Clark sisters definitely need to do that.
I mean, they signed really, really bad contracts when they were younger. And
Yeah.
so one of the ways to get around those bad contracts is to re-record what you own, right? So she may own the lyrics or whatever. Re-record that and over something just a tad different, and then re-release all that music. You know, otherwise you can buy the rights back to your music. The one that's hurting the most right now is Taylor Swift because she doesn't own anything pre like 2018.
Really?
Yeah, she got into a whole spat with her recording company because they wanted her to record like 3 or 4 more albums with them, and for every album she recorded, they would give her the rights to another album. And she was like, to one of the previous albums that she had recorded, and she was like, no, I'm just going to re-record everything again. So everything that she's made from like 1989 back, she doesn't get, like she doesn't own. So she doesn't make, I don't want to say she doesn't make any money from it. I don't know if she does or doesn't. I know she doesn't make all the money from it, which is why I preach for artists to like get your paperwork straight, do what you got to do, so that like I just literally right before I got on with you, I finished uploading and copywriting all the music on the album, right? Like get everything in order so that can't nobody come to you and say nah, and like keep own everything.
Right.
You know, that's the beauty of being alive in 2020. It costs you about $1,000 to get a good studio set up, and then you know you good to go. I mean, $1,000 ain't cheap though, so I ain't gonna say it like that, you know. But
no, it's expensive for me.
yeah, $1,000 over time. Let's say that, right?
So, who are your musical influences? Like, how did you gravitate towards what type of music you wanted to put out?
So I am very PBR&B, right? But I don't gravitate towards PBR&B artists, and PBR&B is like hipster R&B. So you would think of like The Weeknd, you would think of Miguel, in that. So people who can actually sing, but make non-traditional R&B music, right? So you're never going to see me like be a Ari Lennox or Joe or Tank or anything like that, or even pre DJ Got Us Falling in Love Usher, because that's the only Usher that I recognize. But so my internal meter, and I've actually been wrestling with this a lot lately. My internal meter doesn't beat hip hop and R&B. It is very much alternative, like rock music and bluegrass and folk, and so I gravitate towards bands like Mumford and Sons, Of Monsters and People, Local Natives, Incubus, who is my like all-time favorite vocalist, this guy named Brandon Boyd. And you've heard me sing enough to where if you listen to him sing, you'd be like, that sounds exactly like Dexter. It's like Brandon Boyd mixed with this band called Flyleaf, which is a Christian rock band out of Corpus Christi. They lost their lead singer, Lacey Mosley, I guess about 5 years ago. She's like one of my favorite voices. So she's a huge influence. Prince is also a huge influence because he reminds me that your music doesn't have to be accessible to everyone, right? Like the biggest knock against Prince is that his music isn't accessible to everyone. Like you can't just sit and listen to Prince and be like, oh my God, I love that. You have to go on this journey to like Prince, unlike Michael Jackson, where if you sit down and listen to Michael Jackson, most people be like, oh, this kind of slap, right? Like I can get in this straight off the bat. And so Prince has reminded me that I can make music the way I want, and people will like it and people won't, but it will become someone's favorite. And that's all that matters. And you can still see success off of that. You don't have to play into what the music industry is doing right now. So I definitely gravitate towards Incubus, one of my favorites. Jason Mraz, criminally underrated vocalist. Like Jason Mraz is one of the greats. Celine Dion, I don't very much like her music, but I love to hear her sing. Lacey Mosley, I love Prince's voice, so I pattern a lot after him. And other than that, it's not because I'm a huge Beyonce fan. It really breaks my heart when people say she can't sing.
That's
Because
insane to me.
It is like when you talk about the most technically sound people Beyonce is the most technically sound vocalist her understanding of scales and cadence and tone is just like, I don't understand how I'm like, are we hearing the same thing? Like you can't be serious.
I think that what it is with Beyonce is people look at her, and because she's such a big superstar, they feel the need to judge her. But like the reason she is a superstar is because of what her knowledge, her technique, everything.
I agree. And I think
it's really hard. I was just gonna say, I mean, to sing and dance at the same time, just in general, it's hard. I've tried. It's hard.
What's funny about her is I was reading up every once in a while. I can't remember the name of the website, but I'll just Google the range of someone, and there's this website that keeps profiles of every major voice, right? And it talks about what their strengths and weaknesses are. And I was reading hers, and it's very accurate. It talked about how she was hard to listen to in like that 2004 to 2006-ish range when she was like starting to take vocals seriously, and she sounded like Mickey Mouse whenever she got high. But to sit back and read that they were like something to the tune of, well, her breath control is so great that she doesn't experience vocal fatigue. I was like, do you know how much you have to practice to not experience vocal fatigue? Like I have been in a position where I don't get vocal fatigue by singing hard for an hour, right? Like whether that when I used to perform with the band, right? I used to have, or 3 hours. I used to have to do 3-hour sets. And so I wouldn't experience vocal fatigue then, but my band didn't like me because if we messed up a part, I would start the whole song. It didn't matter if it was 10 seconds left. Like, nah, we messed up. We need to start it all the way over. And they were like, no, we need to practice that one part. No, we need to start over because every time we start over, it helps me build stamina to be able to sing that much longer, right? And so if you don't want me to say start over, don't mess up. Those are like the only options you have. And so the fact that she can people who watched Homecoming, like that was a 2.5 hour performance. And I saw her at the On the Run 2 tour in New Orleans. And she was singing, and that show was split. So it's a little bit different between her and Jay-Z, but she literally it was like 60-40 split, Beyonce, Jay-Z. Right. But it got to the point where you could see the crowd was like ready to go. They were like, all right, Beyonce, like we ready to go. You could be the last song. And she was just up there singing everything. And I'm like, bro, do you know how good you got it? How talented you have to be to be that good. Like her and Bruno Mars get the hate that I just don't understand. Like they are
Both
what we
of
should
them,
expect of musicians. Yeah.
they're both of those people. Their work ethic is insane, and that's why they're as big as they are.
Yeah. You don't get that way by being lazy, right? You don't get that way by not mastering your craft, which is what annoys me when untalented people like. And I don't like Taylor Swift, and I made that very clear because I think she's only famous because of what she looks like. Taylor Swift does nothing well, and because of what she looks, she's not a. I mean, she her pen is golden, but her pen is golden only because she exploits relationships with people, right? Or she causes issues inside of her personal life so that she can have fuel to write. Bad Blood is a perfect example. Like you went and made this whole beef with Katy Perry so you could write this song and have it with Kendrick Lamar. She's not a good dancer. She's absolutely not a good singer. I will fight on that one. And she is not like a fantastic instrumentalist. So why are you famous, right? It's because of what you look like and the crowd that you appeal to. It has nothing to do with your talent. Meanwhile, Beyonce, actually Juice WRLD, I throw in this conversation as well. You know, all of these folks worked their butts off to get where they are, and you were basically just given this pass because of what you look like. And I side with Kanye West and the She Doesn't Deserve This Award. I hate that he did it that way. I sound like a Trump supporter right now. I hate that he said it that way, but what he said wasn't wrong. Like you deserve nothing and you should never get anything because you're untalented. But those are the people that we elevate, and we don't appreciate the people who like stay at the bottom level. But every once in a while, you get a Beyonce or even an Ariana Grande. Did you know her name is Ariana Grande, by the way? Like she pronounced it. Yeah, it's actually Grande. We've just decided her name is Ariana Grande. But you know, those people are actually talented and they work hard. I'm not saying they that Taylor Swift hasn't worked hard. I'm just saying her life was made a lot easier because of the lane that she stays in.
Are you a fan of Kanye West?
I love Kanye West pre 2016. You know, that is my introduction into hip hop. You know my mom very well. You talk to her more than I do probably. And my mom was not having the rap music when I was growing up. And you have to think when I was coming of age in music, right, which would have been like 96, 97, 98, that's when you see like, well, early 90s, Biggie, Pac, right? You see Mary J. Blige coming out of that era. You see Method Man, you see Common, you see all those folks like coming out of that era. I wasn't allowed to listen to none of them. And so I had a very specific understanding. Oh yeah. I mean, she had to listen to the Bow Wow CD, that first CD that he came out with before I could listen to it, right? And so like it wasn't until like the early 2000s when Napster started, and I started being a CD man at school that I started burning CDs for people on Napster and making a little cash on the side. I started listening to the stuff that people were asking me to burn for them. And one day I'm listening to College Dropout. I'm like, oh, this sounds dope. This is my kind of music. And I go and look up who it is, you know, and it's this guy with a pink polo on and this tiny backpack, and he's talking about stuff. I'm like, oh, so people can look like me and like hip hop. Mind you, I'm in high school at this point, and I'm literally forcing myself because I want to fit in with my friends, right? I'm literally forcing myself to listen to Webby and when Baton Rouge is Webby and Boosie and CeeLo and like all these people. And I'm like, now, like I appreciate it. Like I love when we used to get together and play ball as cousins and, you know, we listen to Kevin Gates and we listen to Boosie. I like that for a particular moment in time, right? I like that.
It's not
I like that in the
I listen to.
Yeah. Like I'm not gonna be bumping that in my car, and I'm not gonna be like listening to that around my house. But when I'm in the club, yeah, put on some Knuck If You Buck. Like I'm ready. Like, but Kanye was the first one who taught me that music can be different, and also he's a genius at using sound to create a feeling in his music besides lyric, because he's not the most lyrically gifted, but the way that he used sounds, probably with the exception of his drums, because his drums are meh at best, you know, but he is one of my favorites. It's really sad to see what he's become because of his mental health state in the last 4 or 5 years, because he won't take it seriously.
Yeah, it is sad. So do you have stage fright? And if so, how do you overcome that?
No, I don't. And it's number one, it's because I've done it for so long. I've been in plays, I've been playing music. I get nervous. I'm not afraid to perform with I'm not afraid to perform with anyone. And I tell people, And I tell people all the time, like I have to open on the 25th at this place that I can't talk about. And I straight up told the guy who put me as the opener, when people put me as an opener, I want to make it as hard as possible for you to follow me, right? Like I want you to walk away knowing that you're not better than me, at period. Like, and so I have this competitive spirit about me when it comes to music, is that I just think I'm better than you, right? Like, it's not personal, and it's not because I think that I'm more talented than you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I put in more work, and I think that I practice longer. I mean, I just told you after I get off the phone with you, I'm going to go do this practice, 3 hours for 5 days a week, and I'm not going to let myself leave this room for that. But I can get up and I can look at someone and say, this person has never practiced their set. Oh, you still rapping over your vocals? Why are you rapping over your vocals? The point of performing is so that people can hear you and be a part of the show, right? Why are you singing? Why are you singing over your vocals? First of all, didn't know that was a thing until I started performing. I've been a singer forever. I have never heard someone release a song and then sing over those vocals. But I can just tell that you haven't practiced. I can tell that you showed up, you didn't show up for sound check, right? Like I'm the first one at the building every time. I want to go through sound check. I want to run through my whole set before the show is going on. I want to see what technological problems may arise. I want to make sure the DJ knows exactly my cues, so because a lot of times you show up, the DJ doesn't know what's going on. I also want to make sure that like the DJ has my set, right? I emailed it to you before I got there so you can listen to it and tell me if there's any issue. I have it on a jump drive. I have it on a backup jump drive, and I have it saved on my laptop that is in the car, and I have it saved on my phone in case I need to plug in, right? And so when people get up and they're like, oh, well, we're having technical difficulties. How? Like, how did that happen? It's like, I don't understand how people put themselves in position to not put your best foot forward every single night. And so I do not get stage fright, but I think that is because I feel like I'm extremely prepared for any and everything. Occasionally, like even when I'm performing at a place I've never seen before, if it's in Baton Rouge, I will go to the place and like scope out, all right, so I can envision myself and what I'm going to do on the stage. All right, so at this point in the song, I need to move here. At that point in the song, I need to move there. If it's out of town, I'll see if I can Google that image, right, so that I can see what their venue looks like, so I can have an understanding of what my layout is. But too many people just like show up to perform and don't take the investment in like learning the craft of performing, right? So I say
separate from
it is.
Yeah.
And so I tell people all the time, I performed probably 50 times at this point as an act. There was only one time that I can remember that I didn't give the best performance, period, of everyone. And I'm not saying that as like from my perspective. I wait and I watch it because that's also etiquette of performing, right? You don't leave, and if you do have to leave before everyone performs, you tell the person who's put on the show I have to be to work at 6 a.m., whatever, right? But I'll stay and I'll watch, right? And I'll watch the response that they get. I'll watch how their merch table looks. I'm always the one that has people at their merch table follow me on Instagram, asking me, where's the album? Like, what can I do? And I can support it. But people just don't take it seriously. So to answer your question, no, I don't get stage fright. But that's simply because I'm very well practiced, and there's nothing that can throw me off my game from having backup microphones, right? So I have different sets that I play based on if I get to the venue and my box isn't working for some reason and I can't stop it from getting feedback. I have a whole different live set that I have that doesn't require me to use the box, that actually has the vocals that I need the sounds to be made on the track. So like there's always a way to make sure that your set is perfect. And that's my goal. Like, it's to expect perfection on my set, but I don't necessarily require it, right? So yeah.
For those people who do get stage fright, do you have any advice for those people?
Practice your set. Practice your set till you're blue in the face. Practice your set until as you're singing a song, it's so mechanic that you and your vocal cords that you're moving on and thinking about what you're doing after the show. 9 times out of 10 when I'm performing, I'm not present, right? Like I practice so much that I'm thinking like I'm singing Immortal and I'm like, you know what? After this, I think I might stop at Wendy's and get one of them fofofos. Like I'm that naturally moving through the set, right? Even to what I'm saying in between the set. Like, all right, after this song, make sure you plug this, and this. After this song, this is how you intro to the next song. I'm actively not. I am passively performing, right, and actively thinking about other stuff that's going to happen, later on in the night. So practicing takes away all of the wonderment about what you're doing. And I know that seems weird because people are like, well, you kind of, when you say practice, people always equate that to like playing sports, right? But in most sports, you're competing against someone. this isn't necessarily a competition against everyone else. This is a competition to see if I can be the best that I can be. And there's no one to mess that up for me except myself. Right. And so I'm not dependent on any other variables except me putting my best step forward every night. And having stage fright, don't get me wrong, it's a good thing, because if you have stage fright, that means that you want to put on the best show that you can possibly put on.
Right.
The thing is, you have to lean into that and use it as motivation to like perfect your craft. You know, people just think that being talented brings you a long way. I mean, it does and it doesn't, right? Like, I am a very talented public speaker and very good at my job, but it doesn't mean anything if I don't bring in the results that my boss is looking for, right? And so you can be talented. That don't mean that you better than everyone. Kobe Bryant, there's a difference between like Kobe Bryant and LeBron James, right? LeBron James is what we call talented, right? And that doesn't mean he hasn't worked for what he has, but he's naturally gifted in his physique and his power and his strength, his height, his weight, all of those things. Kobe Bryant was built like a string bean, right? And so he was crazy about practicing. I actually just had to give a presentation the other day where it talked about Kobe Bryant every day. Can you imagine this? Every day shot 2,000 shots. Every day. Every day he shot the basketball 2,000 times. He also practiced 3 times a day, right? Whereas everybody else practices twice a day. And so he talked about it on one of his shows. He was like, yeah, I wake up at 4, I go to practice at 6, right? I go until about 8. I'm sorry, it's 4 times a day. I go back at 10. I take a break for lunch, give my body some time. I go back at 2 or 3, and then I go back later on in the afternoon. And he was like, and that seems like a lot, but you have to think about what that does over time when all of my peers are practicing 2 times a day and I'm practicing 4 times a day, you know, double the amount. What does that mean for me over time? It looks like being the third high scoring, the most all-star games, most all-star MVPs, the shooting guard with the most assists of all time, right? And so practice is what puts you above everyone else, not the fact that you're just talented. We're all talented in something. Question is, are you going to do the work to be better than everybody else? And I already think I'm better than everybody else, you know, as a person. So that it just gives me
not
more
as a person. So I know that you just put out an album.
It's on the way out, August 28th. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, Pudding.
What month is it? Oh, it's July.
It's July. It is.
Sorry.
I know this whole year seems like January. I'm not gonna lie.
Right. So I know you have a song on the album called Immortal.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you name it Immortal?
So I started writing this album when I was 26 or 27. So when I was 26 or 27, 4 years ago, I was 27. Our grandmother passed away, right? And that was the first time I lost anyone super close to me. And then it just became like a string of deaths in the family. 8 or 9 people, between family and friends. I've been 8 or 9 people since 2016. And moving into your late 20s, as you are now, you start to recognize you're outliving some of your high school friends, and you're outliving, you know, some of the people you thought were going to be here forever. Right. And you lose the idea that you're immortal, right? But you know, the original song, the original name of the album was supposed to be Immortal with parentheses around the I am, right? So it would have been I'm mortal, immortal. And that may be the name of the album. This is the EP, so this is only 7 songs. The album might be named Immortal, but I don't know yet. But I actually had put that song on the shelf, and then Papa died, right? So Papa died in 2019. And so the lyrics are, these hands have been used to make mountains, right? And so all I could think about was like, these hands have been used to make mountains. And I was just thinking about how big and strong Papa's hands were, right? My feet have made the pathways for oceans and creeks. And I think about all the things Papa did for his city of Baton Rouge, or city of Plaquemine, you know, where he was born, raised, lived, died. And I just was rereading the lyrics. I was like, oh, this song is about Papa. And I didn't know it like then. And so I was like, okay, well, I originally had planned for it to go on the album, but it wasn't turning out the way that I wanted to. So I was going to like leave it alone. And so I went back in one more time and decided to play with it. And I was like, oh, this is good. Oh, this is really good, right? And so that's kind of the trajectory of that song. And it is my favorite song on the album. I know they're all my babies. But that is my favorite song on the album. And when you hear it, you'll hear why. It's because it has a lot of unique sounds in it, and unique effects that move my voice from being a person into these different aspects that aren't human. And I think that you and I, who knew our grandfather, can agree that he was a lot of things. Human wasn't one of them. And so he was just this grandiose figure, not just to us because he was our grandfather, but to an entire like community of people. Whichever way Bro Jackson went, that's the way the community went. And so that song is dedicated to him. And actually, when I perform it live, I perform skits and stuff in my performances as well. There's a recording with Miles Gordon, who I don't know if you may not know Brandon and Bria, but Brandon and Bria are Miss Octavia's children, my mom's best friend. They live right down the street from Papa. And so Brandon's my age, Bria's a little bit younger. Their dad ends up, divorcing Miss Octavia and going to another marriage and having Miles, who's their little brother, who ends up joining the nonprofit that I founded in 2016, right? And so we have this weird circle because Brandon and Bria used to call Papa, right? That was their grandfather too, because they were always at his house too. And Brandon's one of my best friends, growing up. And so his little brother is actually talking on this skit about his grandfather, right? And they asked, he's doing his college admission interview, and the admitter asked him, what have you learned the most, and who have you learned most from? And he's like, oh, it's my grandfather, because he taught me the value of like my hands, right? And how your hands create things that are long after you, and the way that you touch someone, they remember that. The way that you cooked a meal from someone, and everything that has been made possible by hands, from the best books to the best buildings, right? It all started with someone's hands. And so that leads into Immortal in the show. And so that's the full circle journey of Immortal, if you will. And like I said, favorite song on the album, easily.
How did you decide the song order of the EP?
So they're arranged by key, actually. So that's first. So they're arranged to go up in key every time you hear one. And it just, and they go up in tempo slightly every time that you hear one. And then, they crescendo and then go back down. But they still stay in that format of key. And I wrote them as a journey, right? And so you have Immortal, which is first, which is about being, this immortal being, if you will, once you're gone. And then you have Beach House, which is all about coming into your early 30s, right? Beach House is all about what it means to be in your 30s. And then you move into Ghost, where I was really hurt by someone and who disappeared on me. And then you move into Bad Man, which talks about arrogance and how you have to walk after someone has like hurt you and find yourself again. And then you have Depression too, because I battle depression. I'm very, very open about that. And so my mind speaks to me in ways that it doesn't to other people. And then you have Ida's Interlude, which kind of undergirds like all of it, because that's where the whole spiral started in February of 2016, of me going through this like journey of becoming a early 30s person, by time and by mentality. And so that is most of the way that I got the order of the album, pretty much. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I was just telling Lonnie that it's something about being in your late 20s and like moving into your 30s. Like you have this completely different mindset just in life in general. Like for me, like I no longer care like what people think. I'm just gonna do what I do, and either you like it or you don't.
Exactly. And the biggest thing that I learned in my 20s, my late 20s, early 30s, my favorite phrase, why are you talking to me about this? Right? Like why?
Yes.
Why are you bringing me into this? This serves me no purpose. Like I will help anyone with anything that I can help with. But like I also recognize the things that I have to work on, and I recognize the things that like you have to work on, and those things are mutually exclusive. Because you are working on something doesn't mean that I have to be a part of it. I don't have to be a part of the drama. You see that with the family. I'll never understand why family got beef with me, because Dexter stay in his own little circle. Like he don't bother nobody. He don't stay in the drama. And really the biggest one is just recognizing the difference in our families, like our parents generation and our
Absolutely.
generation,
Absolutely.
the idea that I'm supposed to continue to have toxic people in my life because we're family is just,
Yep.
or that you have so, not just family, but that you have so much time invested in these relationships. I'm like, look, I don't have time for that. All I got time for is making money, making music, and making myself happy. Like anything else, if you don't feed into that, you can go, right? And so people don't understand that. Like I just told you I had a girlfriend. We're going on 5, 6 months now. Like no one knows that. By the time they see this, they'll know it because I don't care. But like my mom knows, T Kim knows, Cameron and Markel know. That's it, and that's all because they happened to pop up when she was like around me. I was like,
Right.
oh yeah, you know. But like I just don't feel the need to do those things. And so 20s and 30s, late 30s is weird, especially when your parents won't listen to you about stuff that you like know about.
Hmm.
It's such a weird place to be in. Like my mom's so hard headed. Like was I just hard headed when I was a teenager? Because this is a lot.
You know, it's funny now because now that I'm getting older, like although my mom is my mom,
Hmm.
our relationship is changing. Like I don't want to say we're more friends, but she has
Hmm.
to do a lot less parenting and a lot more just talking, like she's talking to her friend, you know?
Hmm.
It's
It's nice.
changed the dynamic.
It's nice, which is why I miss grandmother so much, is because she became my best friend, for a while, and so, by the time when she passed away, I just moved out. I moved out about 5 years ago, so it was really just her and Ezra, and so we would talk on the phone all the time, and I would go over there
Mhm.
all the time, not all the time, but more than I do now, and just sit down and talk about stuff. Let me tell you what your T Tony did. Like I miss getting those. I
Yeah.
miss getting those phone calls, right? But so goes life, and that's the unfortunate thing about turning 30, and I'm turning older. I think when we were in Monroe, I told you this. You don't realize how invested you are in knowing that people are just out there living their lives and being happy until someone dies, like Terrell did, right? Like me and Terrell ain't close. We're never close.
Right.
Terrell was never really around the Jacksons like talking about, but just knowing that he was out there at 34 years old, just being happy and doing whatever made him happy, and X, Y, Z. Like that made me more happy subconsciously than I actually knew. Because
And
when he died,
it reminds you that you don't know how long you have.
exactly, you
Yeah.
really don't. Uncle Urban is another one. Like me and Uncle Urban never talked. But when he got hit by the car and passed away, I was just like, wait, what? Nah, he was supposed to be here till he was like 90, 120. Loud as he was, he'd have probably been here till 150. His funeral was the most quiet I'd ever heard him. Like it was just, and so but the unfortunate part is like you learn how to deal with it. And it's so unfair that it's something that you have to learn in such a thrown in the deep end of the pool way, but you just have to learn. And this album was my coping mechanism of like getting through that.
Yeah. And I
And
mean, that's what music is supposed to be.
right. And hopefully it connects with people, hopefully. If it doesn't, that's okay, but it's not mine anymore. Once it's released, it's
Right.
for the people. And honestly, I had just been working on it since 2016, and the album doesn't sound perfect at all. There's still things that I hear that I'm like, on there and fix it. But a big part of it was like I just have to let it go, right? Like it has to be done. I have to let it go so that I can move on to this next part. So you might be listening and hear me hit the what is it called, the mic stand, and you might hear the mic rumble, and I'm like, you know what, I could really take that down and do that part again because I can't get that sound out. But you know what, no, because it has to be done, right? It has
You
to be
know,
over. It has to be finished.
that's one of the hardest things for me is if it's not perfect, I don't want to put it out. That's why
Same.
I'm saying at the age I am now, I'm kind of just like, you know what? It is what it is. We're just going to put this out here. If people
Mm-hmm.
like it, great. If they don't, I did it. It's done.
Mm-hmm. Well, technically speaking, the things that we as musicians hear, the normal public doesn't hear, right? And so we have to acknowledge that, but also, us holding on. I'm not who I was 4 years ago,
Right.
right? Like I'm not. And so to be working on this album for 4 years to try and get it out, I'm no longer the person who wrote those songs, and so I have to let that person go
Right.
and move on to the next phase of whomever I am and the music I'm going to write, and so and it might not be music. Right now I'm writing a play with a friend, right? Like, and so that was a big piece of me having to let this go. Was I want to be able, I can't justify doing anything else until this album is out. I can't focus on the play. I can't focus on this voting rally that I want to throw. I can't focus on this collaborative album that I want to do with my favorite artists from around Baton Rouge, right? I can't do it. I can't justify it. And so I have to put it out and be done with it so that I can move on to my next endeavor, whatever that may be. I may want to open a strip club called the Players Club and have them react to the movie every night. I don't know. I might want to do it, but I want the option. I want to be able to do it with no guilt. And so that's a big reason why it has to come out almost, I don't want to say unfinished, I'm gonna say unpolished, right? It sounds good, but it definitely doesn't sound like Lizzo's album. Like it don't sound that good, and I don't expect it to. Like, look, I made this in my brand new house with no acoustic treatments on this equipment that I got for free mostly. Y'all gonna take this and you're gonna like it. Like right. That's all I got left.
So with all that being said, what that was my last question. So what advice do you have for upcoming artists, people trying to pursue their dreams? What advice do you have?
It's never too late, number one, and bet on your goddamn self every time. Bet on you. Like, don't worry about what everybody else is saying. Trust in your abilities, right? That doesn't mean that you ignore all of the things that people are telling you. Because I tell people all the time, if my music is trash and y'all let me release this without telling me my music is trash, I will never forgive you, right? But don't let people dissuade you from like following your dreams. I've had people tell me, "Oh, you're too old to be releasing an album." I had the Baton Rouge God MC when I did that listening party, right? His name's Marcel. I asked him, what did you think? He was like, and he said it in much different ways, but I'm a paraphrase. He was like, "You've worked too hard over the last year and a half to be asking people what they think about your music. You deserve to be able to release your music with no question," right? And my big bro, Chris Gage, who always catches the stuff that I think I'm gonna be able to get away with in my music, the little imperfections, he always catches it and sends my anxiety like through the roof because he's so critical about like my music because he believes in me that much. It was just like, man, I think this is the best work that you've done. I think this is something that has to go on. I think you need to ignore what everyone else is telling you about what doesn't fit on the album or what doesn't sound this way or that you should wait, no, you need to do what you need to do because you deserve it. And so betting on yourself, finding you a couple of good mentors, and investing in yourself. And I mean that by like, hey, I paid $800 or $900 for this Apollo twin. Luckily, I got my baby bottle for free. And my mom bought my Mac for me back in 2013 that wasn't working. And I just upgraded the hard drive to an SSD and put some extra RAM in there for like $150. And I'm able to make an entire album from my, third bedroom in my house. Like, you don't pay that money so you don't have to go and invest in learning how to mix and master your own music. Right. Not that everybody has to do that, but if you have the money to go to a studio, by all means, go to a studio. But when I was going to a studio, I would people would record my music and they would send it back mixed to me in an hour. How did you mix this song in an hour? It's impossible. You can't do it. So learn how you want to sound, even if that means that what I did for my first project, Black Gold, was I recorded everything and then sent it to the guy who I worked with, the engineer who like let me come and use the studio for free, named Toussaint, who used to work with No Limit Soldiers and C Murder and Master P back in the day. And when we went to record, when he was mixing, he would listen to the way that I recorded it and the effects that I put on it and be like, all right, so this is the vibe that Dex is going for. That what he did sounds trash, but I can make that sound professional, right? And so that's how you get Black Gold, and sounding the way that it does. It meets all of my creative appetite, but also has that like professional shine to it. So invest in yourself, practice. Be patient with yourself. Allow yourself to fail and make mistakes. Be prepared, and reach out to others who've been where you are, who have a roadmap. Right. That's the biggest thing you can do. When I was setting up my publishing company and all of that, I was reaching out like, hey, how do I fill this out? What do I do? And people are willing to help you if you just ask and be humble. Right. Like, I think that I'm better than everybody, but that doesn't mean that I go up to everybody and say, oh man, your shit was trash. Like, that was garbage. Like, no, I tell my friends particularly, oh, that was real good. And if they ask for my advice, I'm like, well, this is what I would have done differently. This is what I would have done, right? But we all deserve the right to be around people who trust us, who we trust, and who feed into us. And so that would be my advice. Practice, invest in yourself, and don't be discouraged by what anyone says.
Well, that's all the questions I have.
Awesome. I'm glad I was able to answer them all, I think, adequately, right?
Yeah. Well, Thank you for coming on. I'm
Thank
Kobe
you.
Leon, and you've been watching Consciously Creative. Bye.